I never imagined my own family would try to keep me from attending my father's 60th birthday, yet here I was, standing outside the Grand Azure, watching my sister Meline plant herself in front of the entrance like a bouncer in couture. The hotel's opulent facade towered behind her, a gleaming contrast to the pettiness playing out at its doors. "You can't be serious," I said, smoothing the sleek lines of my black dress, one that cost more than Meline's monthly paycheck. Not that she'd recognize that. He's my father too. Meline's crimson lips twisted into a smirk. "Catherine, this isn't dinner at Applebee's," she said, with exaggerated condescension. "The Grand Azure is exclusive. The tasting menu alone costs more than you probably make in a month." If only she knew, I'd personally curated that menu, down to the wine pairings, with our Michelin-starred chef. Besides, she added, inspecting her reflection in the glass doors, Mom and Dad were clear. They only want successful people here, no one who'll embarrass the family. The irony was almost laughable. Just yesterday, I'd greenlit a $100 million expansion of the Grand Azure brand, and today, I was apparently too much of a disgrace to walk into my own hotel. It might have been funny, if it didn't cut so deep. 10 years ago, when I left our family's modest accounting firm to pursue hospitality, they'd all but written me off. I could still hear my father's voice, "No daughter of mine is going to be a glorified waitress." So I let them believe that. Let them think I was managing restaurants and scraping by. Meanwhile, I built Azure Hospitality Group into one of the most successful luxury hotel empires on 3 continents. The glorified waitress now owned 35 five-star properties, including this one. "Catherine." My mother's voice sliced through my thoughts. She appeared behind Meline, her expression tight. "What are you doing here? We talked about this." They had. I'd received a text this morning, brief and cruel. "Don't come to Dad's birthday. It's at the Grand Azure. You can't afford it. Don't embarrass us." "I brought a gift," I said, holding up a small envelope. Inside was the deed to a Tuscan villa, one of the Grand Azure's crown jewels. I'd meant it as both a birthday present and the start of a long overdue revelation. "Oh, let me guess," Meline snorted. "A gift card to Olive Garden? Or did you save up your waitress tips for something from a strip mall?" My mother's gaze flicked to my clutch, a handcrafted Italian leather piece that cost more than Meline's car. "Whatever it is," she said coolly, "I'm sure your sister's gift is more suitable. She made junior partner, you know." I knew, just like I knew her firm was desperately negotiating a lease in one of my buildings, one they couldn't quite afford. "Meline's doing wonderfully," Mom added, warming to her favorite monologue. "A new house in the suburbs, that beautiful car, and her fiancé, so promising." Her eyes swept over me with barely concealed judgment. "And you? Well, at least you're making an effort." I thought of my penthouse overlooking Central Park, the jet I'd taken this morning, the rare McLaren parked discreetly nearby. "At least I'm trying." "Speaking of effort," Meline said, her tone syrupy with spite, "that dress? Really? This is the Grand Azure, not some roadside diner." I glanced down at the elegant black silk, tailored in Paris by a designer who'd recently turned Meline away without a second look. Not that she'd ever find that out. "It's what I could manage," I said evenly. "Well, you can't come in," Meline announced, arms folded with theatrical finality. "We've reserved the entire VIP floor. It's for family and distinguished guests only." The VIP floor. My VIP floor, the one I personally redesigned last year, handpicking every painting, every piece of furniture, down to the baccarat chandelier glinting above it all. "And who counts as distinguished these days?" I asked, genuinely curious about their definition. "Oh, people you wouldn't know," my mother replied with a flick of her wrist. "The Andersons, you know, the ones with the law firm, the Blackwoods, and Mr. Harrison from the bank, all very important." I almost laughed. Thomas Anderson leased 3 of his firm's offices from me. The Blackwoods had recently begged, twice, for an invitation to one of my most exclusive members-only resorts. And Mr. Harrison? His bank was currently courting my investment group for a sizable lifeline. "Right, very important," I said mildly. "Exactly," Meline chirped, satisfied. "So you see why you can't be here. What would they think if they saw Dad's failure of a daughter handing out hors d'oeuvres?" "Meline," our mother said gently, though her expression remained smug, "be kind. Catherine made her choices. If she'd stayed with the family firm like you did, well, things might have turned out differently." The family firm now occupied a modest suite in one of my lesser buildings, and routinely submitted late rent checks. Just then, Charles appeared at the entrance, tugging at his tie like he was trying to make it look more expensive than it was. "What's taking so long? Oh." He spotted me, his expression faltered. "Catherine, didn't expect to see you." "Clearly," I said. "Charles just made vice president," my mother announced proudly, beaming at him like he'd won a Nobel. "Junior vice president," I corrected, without thinking. I knew his position. His bank managed a few of my smaller regional accounts, the same bank I'd been discussing acquiring this very morning. "Well, it's still more impressive than whatever you're doing now," Meline snapped. "Let me guess, assistant manager at a Chili's?" I thought about the boardroom I'd just left, one floor above us, where I'd reviewed the preliminary documents for the acquisition of Charles's bank. I could have signed them then and there, maybe I still would. "Something like that," I replied. "This is ridiculous," my mother huffed. "Catherine, just go, you're causing a scene. I'll tell your father you couldn't make it." "Couldn't afford it," Meline added with a smirk. I looked past them into the grand lobby, the marble floors I'd chosen, the chandeliers I'd commissioned, the scent in the air from the custom fragrance I'd approved after dozens of samples. Every inch of this place bore my mark. For a heartbeat, I considered walking away. Let them have their illusion. Let them sit in my hotel and pretend they belonged there more than I did. But I remembered something my mentor once told me: silence isn't humility, it's surrender. I lifted my chin, a quiet confidence rising in my chest. "Actually," I said calmly, "I think I'll stay." Before they could respond, the glass door swung open. James, my head of security, stepped out, impeccably dressed, professional as ever. He'd been with me since I bought my first failing inn and turned it into the Azure Empire. "Is everything all right, Madame Co?" he asked, his voice cutting cleanly through the tension. "Chef Michel has held the tasting per your request. Your usual table is ready." The silence that followed was staggering. Meline's face drained of color, her lips parted, but no sound came out. My mother gripped the brass door handle like it was the only thing anchoring her to the earth. I smiled at James. Perfect timing. My family was just explaining why I didn't belong here. "Ma'am?" he asked, brow furrowing. "But, you own the hotel." "Yes, I do." I turned back to them, voice quiet but resolute. "Shall we go inside? You've reserved the VIP floor." "My VIP floor?" Charles sputtered. This is a joke, right? You're just some restaurant manager." James straightened. "Miss Catherine is the founder and CEO of Azure Hospitality Group. She owns all 35 Grand Azure properties across 3 continents, as well as the flagship resorts and our culinary ventures." Meline's clutch slipped from her fingers, landing with a hollow clatter on the marble steps. "But that's impossible," she whispered. "The Grand Azure is worth billions." I gave her a thin smile. "Exactly, which makes your concern about me affording the tasting menu adorable." I stepped past them, into my domain. Inside, staff immediately snapped to attention. "Good evening, Miss Catherine," called Sarah from the front desk, her smile warm and genuine. "Your father's celebration is being held in the executive suite. Everything is ready." "Thank you, Sarah." I turned slightly, glancing back at my family, still frozen in disbelief. "Coming?" They followed, silent, their eyes wide, scanning the hotel as if seeing it for the first time. As we passed the concierge desk, housekeeping, the private elevator, all greeted me by name. I'd earned their respect not just with title, but with time, attention, and integrity. At last, my mother managed a faint whisper. "But your dress. Custom Paris couture," I said with a smile. "Roughly 30,000, a bargain, really." I have a terrible habit of not checking price tags anymore. I led them toward the private elevator, the one that required a key I retrieved from my clutch. "Unlike Meline's dress," I added lightly, "which, unless Valentino started releasing fakes, is a knockoff. The real collection hasn't dropped yet." "I know, because I attended the private showing in Paris last month." The elevator opened directly into the VIP lounge, where my father's birthday celebration was in full swing. Conversations died as we stepped in, heads turned, forks froze midair. "Catherine?" My father rose from his seat at the head table, his face clouded with surprise. "What are you doing here? Your mother said you couldn't afford it." I finished for him, walking forward with a calm smile. "Happy birthday, Dad. I hope you don't mind me crashing the party in my own hotel." "You're at this hotel?" Mr. Harrison stepped forward, suddenly animated. "Miss Catherine, I had no idea you were related to James Thompson. We've been trying to get a meeting with you for months regarding that financing proposal. Catherine owns the Grand Azure, Thomas Anderson added, his voice tinged with awe. My God, James, your daughter is the mystery CEO who's been buying half the city. My father sank slowly into his chair, the color draining from his face. All this time, he murmured, we thought you were just a glorified waitress. I arched a brow. Your words, I believe, back when I left the family firm to build something on my own. But why wouldn't you tell us? My mother demanded, her voice high, eyes wild, fingers clutching her pearls like a lifeline. Would you have listened? I asked quietly. You didn't believe in me when it counted. You measured my worth in job titles and paychecks. Why should I have invited you into my success when you shut the door on my ambition? I paused for a breath, letting the silence sink in. Though by your standards, I suppose I'm worth more than everyone in this room combined. Meline dropped into a nearby chair, her face pale. The villa in the south of France, the one I couldn't book last summer, she whispered. Mine, I confirmed, just like the building your firm is begging to lease, Charles, and the resort membership you've been waitlisted for, Meline. Catherine, my father said, voice low and brittle, don't. I raised a hand. I'm not here to humiliate you, though you've certainly tried to humiliate me over the years. I'm here because I'm done hiding who I am to protect your pride. I turned to the room, addressing the stunned faces with an air of calm finality. Please, enjoy the evening, everything's on the house, my house. As I turned to leave, I paused, pulling the small envelope from my clutch. Oh, and Dad? That envelope Meline wouldn't let me hand you? It's the deed to a villa in Tuscany, one of my most exclusive properties, a birthday gift, from your failure of a daughter. The next hour unfolded like something out of a surreal play. People who once looked through me now scrambled to get close. The Blackwoods begged, pleaded, for resort access. Mr. Harrison cornered me with a desperate pitch about his bank's liquidity. Suddenly, I was the most important person in every conversation. My family, meanwhile, sat in stunned silence. Meline's fiancé disappeared after realizing her promised partnership was tethered to a lease she couldn't secure, because I owned the building. Charles kept pacing outside, frantically typing on his phone. I imagined him updating his resume. My mother oscillated between discreet weeping and loudly explaining to guests that she always believed in me. I let them talk. Later, I found my father alone on the terrace, staring out at the skyline as if he were seeing it for the first time. Those buildings, he said softly, gesturing to the city lights. How many do you own? Enough, I replied, standing beside him, including the one housing the family firm. He nodded slowly, the weight of years pressing down on him. I was wrong about you, Catherine, so terribly wrong. Yes, I said simply, you were. Can you ever forgive us? I considered it years of dismissal, condescension, silence, the way they'd chosen image over understanding, pride over love. Forgiveness isn't what you need, I said, what you need is respect, and that was never on offer, until now. He looked at me with something like remorse, something like awe. I gave him a thin smile. Tell your friends your daughter owns the Grand Azure, that should satisfy your cocktail party conversations. Then I turned, leaving him alone with his thoughts, and took the elevator up to my private office on the top floor. Tomorrow, everything would be different. Meline would no longer be the golden child. My mother would rewrite the past. Charles's bank might become mine. But me? I'd be exactly who I've always been, just no longer hiding it.